Yeah, I want to discuss a little bit about Dr. Copper, and there's actually other forms of copper out there that you might say they're very exotic and they're worth a lot more than gold. No BS. No BS. That's isotopes. Isotopes, the copper isotopes. Now, I know they're used for medical purposes, but they also have military purposes whereby they are they're used in some of the electronics. They have to be pure copper in a very, very pure sense, and sometimes they're using, for my understanding, is they're using electronic circuitry. But they can be worth many, many times more than gold. I got some videos on this. I don't pretend to know a lot about it, but I know some things that you probably won't never see on YouTube in a million years. And I don't know that much where I'm going to state a lot, but Dr. Copper, basically, if you're talking regular copper now, has always been a judge of, the overall economy. Now, last night I was looking at, silver, gold, and Dr. Copper, zinc, and everything, and I'm seeing the bad PMI data start coming in after midnight Eastern Standard Time. First with China, and then I'm watching, things are going down a little bit, but then it boosted. And, which is interesting, here's copper, in the 24-hour. All the bad PMI data came in, the markets tumbled a good 300 points in the Dow, and here's copper, spikes up at the end, which pretty much happened with all the metals. Not just silver, gold, and I know palladium went down like $1 or something, pretty much steady, but zinc was up, aluminum was up. Aluminum has an oversupply. Nickel was up. Now, one thing I've always said about with copper, the simplest way, if you're going to mess around investing in copper and you want to do it by bullion, just buy them U.S. nickels. They're 5 cents each. They cost them 11 cents to produce or more. The metal content, well, it varies. Sometimes it's the actual metal content, spot price is actually more than the copper and nickel that's in it. That's another thing. But I'm going to get into a couple other things here that you won't hear. And I'll probably link up to a couple other videos that I did before. But copper isotopes, this is where something you might find interesting. And I'm not going to say what I know about this because I don't know everything about it and I don't know all the pieces. But copper isotopes are a type of copper, and then they got caesium isotopes 133, which is for atomic triggers, and all kinds of wild metals out there that, because people ask me about rhodium, and, I'm like, I don't want to deal with rhodium, man. I mean, it's like, but there's other things out there that are even more exotic than that, because, they think of like rhodium went to $10,000, $10,200 an ounce, whereas even copper isotopes can be several thousand euros per gram, and they can go all the way down to a euro a gram. They can fluctuate like crazy. Now, I'm going to give you a sketchy thing here, but just using a common sense on actually who takes the other side of this trade. There are private placement platform type deals out there where they can trade up an asset, and it's all legal. It's all with the biggest banks in Europe and the United States and New York. And I shouldn't be talking on this too much because I'm going to say I don't know shit, but I'm going to give it to you real sketchy. And this is nothing. I want to say this. This is nothing the Italian mafia does. Period. Period. There's no Italian mafia involved in this shit because, you listen to a guy that sounds like, I'm from New Jersey, very close to New York City, originally, and, I don't want any kind of like, things in people's heads that, it's the Italian mafia. Italian mafia is not ever involved in this kind of shit. They're more down to earth. If they do things, it's like they build stuff. They're in construction. They build buildings that people use, and, they break a couple rules, but they keep the damn flow of goods flowing, They don't do shit like what these guys do, and it's usually these guys that are like highfalutin suits, you know, and they're the upper echelon. They're the banksters. We'll call them that. They're not the gangsters. You know, you hear that term, banksters. These are the banksters. And what happens is you'll have these private placement platforms, and it's a private trade. So you need to get an asset on it to trade up in the electronic market. Now, this is a closed deal market. And now I'm going to put this all out as a hypothetical situation because I don't want to say I know this shit for real. But I'll point to a couple of the videos on it, and you can look at what I got. Because, you know, people are always looking for inside shit. But I'll tell you what's going on, what I think is possibly going on, which is probably dangerous for me to tell you what I think is going on. But, and I say it again, it's not the Italian mafia doing this shit. It's the banksters. It's not the gangsters, you know. It's freaking Hollywood, you know. People think they know what the hell the Italian mafia is. They don't know shit, you know. It's like movies are one thing. It's actually, you know, it's more fair and square than anything out there, to tell you the truth. But, you know, the point is with these type of private placement platforms, they're closed to the public. So you have an asset. You get copper isotopes, or you might have a CD certificate of €1 billion or whatever. But usually you do it with the metals, because the metals can have a very widely varying price fluctuation. Now, I don't understand the mechanisms of leverage, but they got people out there that are PhDs in this area, and, you know, it sounds like I'm talking bullshit here, but I'm not. But they will understand how they can leverage an asset up like 10 times inside of a couple of days. And they'll do it on these private placement platforms. Now, somebody walks out smiling with a whole pile of money. They'll have mega millions, right? And it's all like legit. It's legal. It's with the it's the government's approved it. You know, the Wall Street, the banksters, it's all legal. It's not illegal. You know, it's not like this shadowy thing doing it. But on the opposite side of the trade, there's a loser who lost big. Is it an individual? No. It's the banking institution itself. So what I'm alluding at here is the derivatives bubble. You get what I'm saying? There's a lot of behind the scenes private placement platform trading that goes on, and the losing side, it just sits there on a balance sheet someplace and nothing happens until maybe there's a cash flow crunch on a too big to fails. Then you know who comes in, you know, their puppet government, who, you know, the big too big to fail owns, and, you know, ultimately who pays for that is the common working person, right? So that is really, you know, I'm being very sketchy on this, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that is traded, and that's exactly how they're extracting that much money out of the system. You know, it's stuff you're not even seeing. I don't see all of it. I'm kind of like aware of a little bit of it, and you know, I find it very interesting with all the bad data that came in for PMI, you know, which they blamed on the weather. Look at Dr. Copper. Now, copper's not something to metal, you know, at the end here, where it jumped up. This is a 24-hour chart. All the data comes in, it jumps up. That's kind of what was happening with silver, too, an industrial metal. Which tells you that's not because of productivity. That's like fear of the actual currency. That's actual fear of the currency. And see, what I'm saying is, since I am slightly aware of some things that go on behind the scenes with these major trades, and, you know, somebody walks off with, like, you know, a lot of money. There's people, I'm going to tell you, there's people out there and that have way more money than you would ever think. They don't play the, they don't show it. They don't show it. And you could see the documents that they have this, or they have this in storage, or whatever it is. They can have jewelry, paintings, praised at this kind of value. They can have these special metals. They might even have a certificate of deposit in euros of a billion, not a freaking million, a billion euros cash. Certificate of deposit. That's verified. You know, with the QSIP number, whatever the hell is on it. I think that's what's on there. There's some kind of number you can verify it. And, you know, they'll be like playing like they're a dentist. You know, one of them was a dentist with 3 employees. You know, not in the United States. And, you know, if you look their names up on Forbes, it ain't there. They ain't there. They ain't there at all. So, you know, what you really know and what really happens is 2 different things. You know, I get pissed off at this Alex Jones clown because I know what he's doing. He's a multimillionaire that plays fear and drama to the crowd. You know, the guy that really told you what was going on was Bill Cooper. You remember that guy from a long time ago? And you remember what happened to him, right? Right? You know, anybody tells you the truth, they get dead, you know? Which I don't plan to be dead, but, you know, I'm not telling you the whole truth anyway, what I know everything about. But, you know, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with these inside, in-house, closed to the public trades that somebody's walking off with a whole pile of cash, and you know they in turn are buying up real assets with that cash, and they're making more money with those real capital assets, and the other side got nothing. But the other side of the trade is not a person, it's an institution. It's something that's sitting on the balance sheet that is like it's a number, but it's fictitious. It's not there. There's nothing backing it up. It's like zero. As a matter of fact, you could do so many different things with entities and other entities, and banks do this all the time. They create entities as shells, and they put assets in them, and they're double counted all over the freaking place. That's why I'm telling people, you stick with the real, and especially with assets that you can actually pick up and you can say, you know, this is the asset, whatever the hell it is. This is a pen, you know, whatever the hell it is. That's the asset. I have a pen. I don't have a piece of paper that says I have a pen. And that's what counts. And that's what counts. So I want you to very carefully examine. This is kind of interesting because when I saw this happen with copper, and you know, it happened, maybe not as radically, it happened with zinc, aluminum, lead, nickel. You know, after all the PMI data came in, you know, they were dropping, and then it shot up. It shot up. You know what that's telling me? It's not that this went up, it's that the dollar and the currencies can't be trusted. Some of the age-old stuff these people have been forking out for the last several years, and it doesn't look like it's true. It is true. The currency crisis is coming up, and that's your next big freaking implosion that's going to happen. It may take a few years. We may do very well in the metals in 2014. I expect the real blow-off top in the metals is going to be in 2017, around that time, not 2014. Although I expect a good year this year. But just to behoove you, I'm going to link up a couple of videos I did before on copper, and there's a lot of stuff out there that people don't know. And you know, you're not going to get this on, you know, the insider guy or all this kind of shit. And I'm not going to tell you every damn thing I know anyway. So, you know, well, this is all I know. Let's say that. Fuck it. You know, it's bad enough for me even saying this shit, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And that's how they extract as much, the big guys extract as much out of the system as they can. And like I said, they're not Italian mafia at all. They're not Italian mafia, you know, at all. None of them. None of them. They're all banksters. Smooth talking, you know, high, you know, 15 different degrees and shit like that, you know. And they talk real nice, and these are the guys that have all the, you know, they're playing this kind of game. And, you know, Russia's involved with it big time. Russians are involved with it. They've always have been. What the hell do you think these oligarchs? It's crazy. Sometimes these people on the YouTube, they think that Vladimir Putin or something like that is this guy that's like a reformer and always, and they're against the West. All their money, him and all the oligarchs in Russia, all their money is tied up with the West. They're all working together. And the same with the Chinese elite. They're all working with the Western elite. They might compete with each other, throwing stones at each other, but they're all working together, basically. That's exactly what's going on. So when they walk off with when they do something with these private placement platforms, and you got isotopes worth, 3,000 euros a gram, and you got tons of them, and you trade them up, and you make all this money, and somebody else lost. It's the entity that lost. And they might put that off into another shell entity. And I don't want to be too specific about this because I don't know everything. But I also want to say, this is not the Italian mafia doing this shit. These are the banksters. These are the banksters. That's exactly what they are. And this is what's going to lead to the currency crisis. Because when they start digging into what these banks really have, these banks are dreaming up all these shenanigans. The banks are doing it. Not the construction people. The banks. The banks. Not the construction people. The construction people build things. They make things that people can use. The banks come up with shenanigans and shady plans, and they walk off with the loot. That's what they do. And that's not the way, that's not the way of, what people, well, I don't want to get into that kind of shit, but that's not the way of what other people would do. That's what banksters do. Banksters do that kind of shit. So I'm going to tell you right now, we are going to have a major, major, major banking crisis. I don't know exactly when, but we will. And I'm seeing this. This doesn't jive with the PMI data. Copper going up like a rocket. It doesn't jive. And this is what's going on with everything. Why? It's because they don't trust the greenback. You know what I mean? Currency crisis, banking crisis. Metals is going to be your safety. That's what it's going to come down to. And like I said, I'm going to link up a couple of those. I don't even know where the hell I have them, but there's some other copper videos I did on some things. And copper is a very, very useful metal besides silver, believe me. And, it's not even just for, electricity and building and wires and shit like that. Actually, there's a lot where the body needs it for essential collagen, and even it works as an antibacterial. There's a lot of things that work with copper, too. So it's got a hell of a lot of uses besides just the industrial uses. It's got some very exotic uses, too, because I never heard of silver isotopes. I don't know what maybe they do exist. I'm not an engineer. I don't understand what isotopes are. I just know they can cost a hell of a lot of money. That's all I know.